The countertop will have a bead around the perimeter to help keep water on the top. This image of the finished potting bench shows the bead, and going back to the 3D model, we can see the bead formed around the perimeter and then a cross-section view for a better look at the bead. And now back to the workbench to see how this was done. I have the lower form on the workbench, and down here in what will be the right corner, I found I had to add a stop for the two plastic corner coves because when I set them in place, they just fell through. I glued up a set of stops to align the jig I made for cutting this cove that you'll see in just a second. The jig is so that the router bit perfectly follows the outline of the form. The stops are clamped to the base using spring clamps, and then I position the jig on the stops. Here is the router assembled with the 1¼ inch cove bit and a router bushing. Router bushings are used to guide a router around a template. With the bushing, the jig should guide the router around the perimeter, cutting the cove so that the edge of the cove almost intersects the edge of the base. Now I think I'm ready. I positioned the jig using the stops and then decided to screw the jig down to ensure it does not move. If I had clamped the jig to the base, then I would not have been able to make a continuous cut because I would have to move the clamps. I use my height gauge to set the depth of the cut. This is critical because too deep will cut too wide. I intend to start shallow and then adjust deeper as needed. I really only have one chance to get this right. Everything's ready, I hope, but there comes a point to where you just have to start cutting. The first pass is done, and as planned, it needs to be a little deeper, but first to measure the edge remaining to ensure that the cut is symmetrical around the perimeter. There was about 1/4 inch remaining on each side, but the corners are about 3/16. Apparently, the quarter radius on the jig are too small. Now to figure out how to adjust the jig. I got out my small combination square, a ruler, and a compass to enable me to find the new center for the corner, and X marks the spot. Then again, using that compass, I marked the new radius, which is 1/16 difference from the original. Using a disc sander on the table saw, I carefully dressed up both corners to the new radius. I did not video finishing this cut. You've already seen how that works. I took progressively deeper cuts until it was close to intersecting the edge of the base. I have finished the cut, and as we take a tour around the perimeter, we can see it's right about where I wanted it to be. A couple of voids showed up that will have to be filled in, and I will need to make a custom sander to finish everything up. Next up in this series will be attaching the plug for the sink and forming the cove around it. Be sure to subscribe to be notified when new content is uploaded.